What's your glitch in the Matrix story? I have a fairly unique face. Big chin that's kind of crooked and sleepy eyes. Think Mike from Breaking Bad eyes. I also have blonde hair with streaks of white in it. In the 90s I grew it long. So, fairly unusual look all around, particularly since the area I lived in was majority black. I was waiting to cross the street, and across the street there was this guy that looked a lot like me, down to what I was wearing. We're just kind of staring at each other. As we cross, we both slow down and actually come to a full stop to just stare at each other. We didn't just look a lot alike, we were freaking identical. I may have imagined it, but I think he even had the same scar on his eyebrow. The light changed, cars honked, and we both scurried across in opposite directions. We both looked back and then kept going. Still kind of freaks me out. I dropped a stamp the other day. I watched it as it fell to the floor. I did not take my eyes off it at all. I didn't blink or look away. Just before it touched the ground it completely vanished. I checked under the desk. I checked under the chair. I moved the desk for a more thorough check. I flipped the chair over to examine the bottom. I checked inside both my shoes. I checked inside my socks. I took the drawers out of the desk and searched them. It had fallen so straight and so gradually that there ought to have been no way to miss it. The void claimed a stamp. I was walking down a semi-crowded sidewalk. A good amount of people, but not too many, you know. Anyways, point is, this woman in front of me tripped and stumbled a bit, sending her phone into the air and onto the ground. I saw and heard this phone hit the ground, saw it shatter, and then I blinked, and it was back in her hand, perfectly fine. She was walking like nothing happened. I was 15 at the time. Had a dream where I went to this arcade I'd normally frequently go. I was with my buddy, and before walking outside to wait for our ride we both buy sodas to go. We're squatting outside on the curb holding our drinks, looking into the parking lot. I finish my drink and for no reason I start putting my hand in my soda cup and continually throw ice out of the cup onto the ground. I pause for a second and say softly to myself, "Ha, déjà vu," as even in my dream I was thinking I'd seen this somewhere before. I then lift my head up, look left, and see two kids with skateboards riding, and then I wake up. About 10 days later, I'm at the arcade again with my same buddy. Before walking out to wait for our ride we both buy sodas. We go outside and sit on the curb in the same spot in my dream. I finish mine and again I start repeatedly throwing ice out of the cup. I pause and say softly to myself, "Ha, déjà vu." I freeze in pure terror, realizing I was repeating the same actions in my dream, and recognizing that the déjà vu I had in my dream was only déjà vu because it's now happening 10 days later. I slowly crank my head to the left because I heard some noise, and to my further shock I see two kids walking towards me with skateboards in their hands. I sprung to my feet and started flipping out with my buddy still sitting, confused and asking me what was wrong. For what it's worth, purchasing a soda while leaving and throwing ice out of my cup aren't normal rituals. In fact, it was the first time I could remember doing either of those two things. When I was in the university, I rented a larger apartment with 3 friends. One night, I saw this super vivid dream, which I remembered after waking up completely and in high detail. It was about our friends, who had married recently, and were on a honeymoon at that time. I explained the dream, including all the small details, to my roommate. The dream was an exchange in our living room, where the newlywed wife of my friend was reading today's newspaper, while we guys, 5 of us, discussed other stuff. She suddenly raised her head from the paper and asked if we had today's paper. I responded by laughing and asking if she was having so much fun at her honeymoon that she lost the track of time. 2 weeks later, the couple had returned and were visiting us. At some point of the evening we sat down to the sofa group, exactly to the same seats where I saw us in the dream. I didn't remember my dream at that moment. A few minutes later, she started reading the paper while we talked. Then the situation started to escalate. The memory came back big time. She raised her head from the paper asking for today's paper and I lost control of my own actions. In complete shock, I realized I could not do anything else than laugh and say those exact words my dream had me saying. At this point, my friend who I explained the dream to earlier had gone completely white on his face. I was sweating and gasping air after exiting the robot mode, and everyone around the table was looking at us. The rest of the night we discussed if time is a roamable dimension after all, and if there are wormholes through the multiverse to other points of time. That was my glitch in the Matrix. Once upon a time I worked at a pizza shop and had to wash dishes at the end of the day. I was in the back, sweeping the floor, while a faucet poured water into a big, commercial 3-hole sink. This faucet was super duper loud. Someone came back to talk to me and I couldn't hear them over the roaring faucet. Without thinking about it consciously, from way across the room, I extended my hand and kind of made a squeezing motion, and the fricking faucet turned off. The guy trying to talk to me went pale and left the room, and it was never spoken of again. I still don't know what he wanted and I've never been able to reproduce this moment of telekinesis or whatever it was. I have this very distinct and vivid memory of my childhood. When I was 4, I climbed the fridge to get to the top, because that's where the candy was hidden. When I got to the top, I reached up with one hand to grab the candy box but couldn't hold on with the other and fell, hitting the back of my head. I had to get stitches and there is still a bald spot from the impact. The problem is, this story never happened. The real story of the scar is that I was walking down the stairs, slipped and hit the back of my head that way. From the age of 4 until 26, I never mentioned it or ever talked about it with my family. Then one day the conversation came up randomly and I got to tell the story of the fridge climb to my parents. They said that never happened, and the real story was the stairfall. I have zero recollection of the stairfall and I can still visualize the fridge climb. I gave up after a while of trying to convince my parents of my version because they said they literally saw the stairfall and subsequent visit to hospital etc. And I didn't want to sound crazy. To this day I don't know how the frick this is possible. Either something from that fall loosened something inside my mind and implanted a new story, or there was an actual glitch in the Matrix and I lived parallel universes at the same time in that one moment. Both options seem likely to me. I remember the crash. My dad was T-boned in his green Nissan which wrote off the car. I remember telling the police all about it at the scene. I remember my parents telling me to tell the doctors that my neck and chest hurt, even though they didn't. I remember having a week off of school, which was fun. I remember my dad berating the insurance company over the phone. So a few years ago, when my dad bragged about how he had never been in an accident, I took the smug pleasure of correcting him and reminding everyone about the accident. Only everybody looked at me like I was going crazy. According to everybody in my family, my dad has never had a Nissan and that he would never have or drive a green colored car because he thinks they are unlucky. I've pushed it, insisted it, told my family everything I remember and they all say exactly the same thing as above. That has got to be a past life memory. Getting money out of an ATM. Put my card in, entered my PIN and it chose the amount of money I wanted. I was waiting about 5 minutes for my card and money to come out when nothing did. Starting freaking out trying to call the bank when I looked in my wallet. My card exactly where it was before I took it out but with no money in my wallet. Weirdest experience ever. Girlfriend was there too and also saw me put my card in the machine and enter my PIN etc. This happened about a month ago. I took a bowl of leftover pasta out of the refrigerator and set it on the counter. I turned to get some bread and when I turned back it was not there. I am 100% sure that I had the bowl in my hands at one point. I looked for at least 15 minutes for it, all over the house. I remember looking for it in the sink. I thought I was losing it. I called my wife and left several messages. When she got home from class I told her about it and she said that she had it for lunch. And there the bowl was in the sink. It still bothers me to think about it. An older woman at a grocery store left the lights on her car and the battery died. I saw her trying to get it started. I went over and asked her if she needed help. She said she wasn't sure what was wrong. I looked and said the battery was dead but I have cables and can help her. I gave the car a jump and she was good to go. She thanked me and left. I went into the store and came back out and there was another older woman in the same make, model and color of her car parked a row over with a car that wouldn't start. I was sure it was her and walked over and asked what happened now. The woman looks at me confused and said we've never met before. It was a different woman. I thought I was going insane. Her issue was with the starter. Rocked the car a bit and it started. I was waiting for my son's football match to start so I went to get a coffee. There was 2 people serving. One was a lady who was bending down sorting out stuff under the counter and a bloke standing up. He looks at me and asks, "What you having, mate?" I reply, "Black coffee please." "No problem," he says. "Sugar?" "2 please, mate," I say. The lady stands up and nods at me as if to say hello. I nod back and turn around to see if my lad's game has started. When I turn my attention back to the coffee stand, they are back in the same position. "What you having, mate?" he says again. Black coffee," I say. "No problem." "Sugar?" 2. The lady straightens and nods at me. It was so weird that I felt off for the rest of the day. I regret not saying, "Didn't we just do this?" But for whatever reason I just wandered off. When I was 8 and my sister was 12, my parents got us both parakeets for Christmas. Terrible loud as heck gift. What were they thinking? I had a yellow one I named Sunny and my sister had a blue one named Skylar. They were the first pets we had that were exclusively ours, and we played with them every day for about 3 months. We taught them a couple tricks like to fly and perch on our fingers and follow our other finger around side to side. Made them look like they were dancing, I think. Anyway, my bub Sunny was in a freak accident and eventually died of his injuries. I was heartbroken. A few months later my dad's job gets transferred to a city 3 hours away. My sister was told she needed to release Skylar to the wild, aka suburbs, cause she wasn't going to move with the family. So in a tearful ceremony we opened Skylar's cage and that bird bolted out of there, flew over the neighbor's house to be gone forever. So we thought. Flash forward almost 5 years later, living in a new city, having completely forgotten about the birds. My family goes camping to a state park just outside of town for a week. During our little family trip to this beautiful corner of Texas, me and my sister decide to go play on the jungle gym, and while we are sitting on the top, a light blue parakeet identical to Skylar comes flying down and lands right next to us on the jungle gym, letting out a friendly chirp. Me and my sister both froze and looked at each other and back at the bird and slowly say, "Skylar." The bird lets out another friendly chirp and I decide that this is definitely Skylar. I stick out my finger next to her and she jumps on my finger just like we had taught her almost 2 years before. And I start to move my finger on my other hand side to side and she starts swaying, just like we taught her. Me and my sister lose our crap. Our long lost bird had found us. We say we have to take her back home and the bird lets out another little chirp and flies away. We couldn't shut up about it for weeks after. About 2 years ago I was driving up a short hill in the overtaking lane. I was attempting to overtake a particularly slow car. I was going far too fast. I absolutely knew this but was somehow fine with it. Then I had a burst of adrenaline and decided to accelerate even harder to overtake the car before the overtaking lane merged back into one lane. Sometimes I don't think I was successful. I think after I crested the hill I was 2 abreast in the now single lane. A truck was in the opposite lane starting to come up to the hill and I think I hit it at the right hand side, the truck driver's left side, straight on, at considerable speed. I remember looking at the truck and thinking I'm going to hit it but feeling that that's okay. Everything is going to be fine. I think I saw the front of the truck hit and crumple the left side of my car. Saw it come right up to my face, then, for a second, nothing but black. A moment later I was parked by a small factory type building about half a mile down the road. I remember my skin feeling prickly and tingly and I felt the adrenaline whoosh out of my body. I cut my journey short and just went home. Now, on occasion things just feel left of center. The world just feels a little more grey and cold, and I mean that literally and figuratively. My family and friends seem absolutely the same and I'm very happy in my life, but some things in the world just seem off. This seems absolutely ridiculous to say, but sometimes I'll be in a place and I'll get an odd, uncomfortable feeling and then the place seems to flash to warmth and sunlight and happiness. It then goes back to this slightly off, grayer place. I see the same physical place but for a while it seems much more beautiful. I'll read an article or listen to the radio and I'll think that that's not how it's supposed to be. So I'll Google it and sure enough I was wrong. It's not all the time and it doesn't worry me. As I said, my personal life is the same and I'm happy. It's the outside world that sometimes feels so off and so wrong. Things appear. I'll pass an area 1000 times and then one day there's something that's always been there. I don't believe. I was wrapping Christmas presents at our dining room table. I used scissors to cut the wrapping paper. I set the scissors down on the table, finished some final taping on the present, then carried the present over to the tree. When I returned to the table 30 seconds later, the scissors were gone. I'm known for losing things right in front of my face, so I called my wife into the room to help me look. I assumed she would find them in a few seconds and laugh at me, but not this time. We looked everywhere, including emptying the trash can just in case I accidentally threw them away while tossing away scraps of wrapping paper. After quite a bit of a searching, we both gave up and said well they'll turn up eventually. We witnessed the presents being opened a few weeks later and the scissors didn't wind up wrapped along with a present, so we ruled that out. We moved 4 years later and those dang scissors never turned up. My fiance's fish jumped out of its tank. Never seen again, not even the corpse. They don't have any other animal and the floor was clear. My grandmother said to me one day, did you see that thing on the news about that man being murdered in a sleepy town where nothing happened near our home? I hadn't, so I asked her more questions. And she told me he was in his 70s and he was found with head injuries and a man in his 20s had been arrested. I checked the news later that day and didn't see anything about it. Then a week later it happened. Not long after she told me about a cruise ship sinking. A week later Costa Concordia. She tells me things in TV shows before they're on and talks about plane crashes and earthquakes and stuff before they happen too. The recurring theme is that they're all things she says she's seen on TV. There's been times where it looks like the lights flicker for a split second, but I'm outside during daytime. I watched The Avengers a few years before it was released, specifically the 1998 movie with Sean Connery, not the Marvel one. I still remember my surprise when seeing this movie on the new release shelf at the rental place in the grocery store. I knew I had watched it a while ago, so I figured they were just misplaced, until I checked the date on the back of the case and saw it was for the current year. I had my mom check it out, as I just had to know. I wasn't sure it was the same movie until I saw people in colored bear suits at a conference table. I have no idea how this happened, but my younger brother also remembered watching it too. Me and my parents were looking for the car in a shopping mall parking lot. We just left the late night movie session, so it's quite empty because the mall is closed. We left the car in the 6th floor, so we go to the elevator and press 6. The doors open and we're on the 5th floor. We walk back inside and press 6 again. Doors open and we're on the 7th. Okay, there's probably some issue with the elevator. We look for another one. Same thing happens. We try another one and there's no number 6. Okay, let's take the stairs. There's no door for the 6th floor. So after about 40 minutes wandering around thinking we entered a wormhole and are stuck in a freaking parking lot, we suddenly end up on the 6th floor and find the car. I was at a Cub Scout day camp where we did fun activities AP day, go home to sleep, and then repeat for several days. I don't remember how long. One of these activities was archery. Now if you've ever been in an archery range, you know that you need to follow the range master's commands or else you'd be kicked out of a range. Now as a fidgety 10-year-old, I got bored and started to screw with what I could. We were at the point where we could hold our bows but not grab an arrow. So, I decided to mime shooting an arrow. I neither had an arrow nor even pulled back the strong of the bow, but when I let go of the string a balloon pinned to my archery target popped. I panicked because the pop made a huge sound and the 60-something rangemaster walked over to me and asked if I fired an arrow, which I didn't. Still have no idea how that balloon popped in perfect timing to my mimed shot. I threw a rock out a window and it smashed, but then a few minutes later the window wasn't smashed. I was in the office during my lunch break at my old job and was busy on the computer doing a task that was taking up most of my attention. My colleague and I's cubicles were in a corner directly opposite our manager's office, and we were the only ones in the office finishing up this task while everyone was out to lunch. We both distinctly remember our manager walking out of his office and going past us to leave for lunch. We are concentrating on what we are doing, so we barely look up, but say goodbye when he goes by. Maybe 10 minutes later, our manager walks out of his office again to leave for lunch. We were stunned. There were no other entries into his office and there was no way he could have gone back into his office without walking by our cubicles and us seeing him. When I was younger, I was at my neighbor's house playing on the Wii they had just gotten for Christmas, and we were recording our experience for some reason. We were in their bedroom and on the wall right of the TV is a closet with a sliding door. Well, at one point in the video moved to the closet for a second or two, probably when my neighbor was paying more attention to the TV than to recording. For a very brief second a magazine pops out of the closet and then shoots back in. We didn't realize this happened until we rewatched the video a little while later and we all thought this was strange, so we tore the closet apart looking for anything that could have been even mistaken for a magazine and found nothing. Mind you, no one had gone in or out of the room or closet. A few days later we were looking for the video to show our parents because they didn't believe us and it had been deleted off of the phone or iPad or whatever we were using. All the other videos were there but that specific one was deleted. It was freaky. Well, a girl in my high school class that sits next to me suddenly changed skin color one day, black to brown. And I was like, OHH, guess she moved. Then everyone is calling her the same name and I am like, wow, what a coincidence, but she also has the same last name, Sulu. She wasn't fully rendered. The picture of my granddad blinked an eye to me. I know it is impossible but it did it. You're a wizard, Cloney. One day back when I was in 3rd grade, I took a break from my usual lunchtime activities, which mainly included either digging in the sand or getting up to inadvisable mischief, to watch a few of my friends attempt to play basketball. The sport didn't really interest me, but I'd had the idea that I could hang out on the sidelines and provide amusing commentary to the other people who were eating their lunch there. So I sat down at where I thought the best vantage point would be and just started running my mouth off. For the first several minutes, everything progressed about as one would expect. My friends managed to score a few points. I prompted a few laughs and a few shouts of "shut up," and the game continued with as much action and fervor as a group of 8-year-olds could manage. Then, as one of the kids lobbed a shot toward the basket, something very strange happened. The ball arced through the air, hit against the rim, and froze. Not only that, but everything froze. Each of the students, every piece of windblown trash, and even every sound just stopped. It was like being inside an eerily accurate gallery of statues. A second or two passed before I realized that I was rambling at a completely stationary world, and as soon as I did, the passage of time righted itself. The world resumed from precisely the same second when it had frozen, with everything and everyone continuing as though nothing had happened. Now, the logical conclusion is that I had a mild seizure or something, and that my brain just filled in gaps after I recovered. The thing is, though, I can remember talking during the moment of stillness, slowly realizing that something was wrong, then feeling my heart pound with the beginnings of panic. I wasn't trapped in that motionless world for very long, I'll grant you, and there's probably a perfectly reasonable explanation. But even so, part of me still feels like I experienced a glitch in reality. Apparently the planet needs more RAM. Every time I'm walking in the park, I walk behind my tall friends. With that being said, I sometimes run through spider webs that were supposed to be broken by the people in front of me. I hate spiders, and a spider web in the mouth is such a horrible feeling. Went with 2 friends to a condo they used only on the weekends. Myself and one of my friends were wearing sunglasses and took them off when we entered the condo. Because it was not a primary residence, furnishing was sparse. Couch, coffee table, dining table, a loft bedroom with a bed, dresser, nightstands, and that was pretty much it. We put our weekend bags away and then got ready to leave for lunch, but my friend and I could not for the life of us find our sunglasses. The condo was tiny with only a handful of places to put something, yet both pairs were missing. We gave up and went out to lunch. When we returned, everyone took a nap. I woke up with a start and found my sunglasses resting on my chest. This was in the loft bedroom, which was not anywhere near where I would have placed my sunglasses upon entering the condo. My friends were both completely conked out and snoring away. Can't explain it. My other friend never did find her sunglasses. Back in 2004 I pre-ordered Doom 3, which came with a pewter figurine of the man Cubus. It was sitting on my desk one day when I reached out to grab something else and accidentally knocked the figurine off. I never heard it hit the ground and I never saw it again. Was on a train listening to music when I looked at what time it was. After listening to a 3-4 minute long song, I look at the time again and it's 10 minutes later. To this day, I still can't explain it and swear that I only listened to one song, not multiple. I was around 8 years old. I was going out to my yard and someone had left the lights on. There was a sort of wall in my yard where you could hide, and behind it there was something we used to store water to wash the dishes and clothes, so that object was about 2 feet tall, and I used to put my hands on the edge and balance myself. That night that I was going out, I saw a girl balancing there just like I used to do. I looked closely and that girl was me. She was not wearing the same clothes I was wearing that day, but something that I used to wear usually. She stared at me for what I felt was an eternity, then hid behind the wall to never come out again. I told my dad about that and we could never find an explanation to what happened. I was like 10 at some sports camp thing, and the game was the coach guy hit a tennis ball way on the air and we had to catch it. I am not athletic like that. The sun was bright and frankly didn't want to be there. It was boring. But he hit the ball towards me, but I didn't look up because frick's sun. I did the ridiculous cartoon run in circles thing you see in baseball episodes. Then held my glove out, still not looking up. Ball landed in my glove. I only knew the vague direction. It was a 1 in a million catch, and all for that I got to not play the game until the next round. Just was once you catch one you get to sit down on the bench until next round or whatever. One day I'm hanging out with my brother and his wife. As we're chatting, we mention Gauntlet, Legends, and wife says what's that? Both my brother and I respond the exact same sentence with perfectly matched intonation and voice tone. We said, oh it's a. We glance at each other and then say a game. We collectively crap a brick at how we even matched the drawn out way of saying game. Even the glance was like we had rehearsed it. We can chalk it up brothers spending lots of time together. I was at a sleepover with a couple of my best girlfriends a couple years ago. It was about 1 AM and we were making brownies. All of a sudden I felt like I had just said goodbye to someone. Like someone had just been picked up by their mom late at night because they for some reason couldn't stay. I felt this intensely enough that I felt like I almost remembered what this person looked like. Did someone just leave? I feel like someone was just here but they left, but I can't imagine who it could have been. Literally everyone had just felt the same exact way at the same exact time. Not one person said they didn't know what I was talking about. We were not a group that shared creepy stories. We didn't watch scary movies together. No one there would have made it up, or even thought of making it up. Sometimes I think of other times I hung out with that group and I feel like someone is missing even then. It sort of makes me want to cry. You have been visited by the sniper Kitter. Good aim and also accuracy will come your way if you comment snipe well. Kitter, thanks for watching. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video, or don't. Either way, have a great day you magnificent people.